I got another why basic strategy video for you guys today. This is where we go over 3 different hands of blackjack and kind of explain why basic strategy says what it does, all right? But first off, if you're new to my channel, welcome. This is A1 Blackjack, channel where we teach you how to count cards fast. So if that sounds good to you, stick around because we're going to show you kind of the why behind some of these tough decisions, all right? We have 3 of them today. Our first one's going to be one where when you see it, I think it's going to make sense to you. The second one's going to be one that you probably have heard for years. We're going to show you exactly why it makes sense. And the last one, we're going to really dive into the numbers, and that is what I consider to be the most fascinating one of this video today. So first off, like I said, you know what? Let's get you some chips. Can't play without chips. Nice stack of hundreds there. First one, like I said, is going to be one where when you see it, I think it will make sense, and you'll be like, oh, that probably makes sense to me. And that is going to be when you have a 10 versus a dealer's 10. I had actually someone comment, they came up with 2 of the 3 of these decisions today. And they were wondering, why don't we double this? Why don't we double down? In fact, let's just give you a couple here. Why wouldn't we double down here when we have a 10 versus a dealer's 10? We do it when we have a 10 versus the dealer's 9 all the way down until 2, but why not 10 versus 10? And I think what's happening is, tell you what, let's put up a quarter of the deck here. This is all the spades. All right, and let's kind of think through this a little bit. But I think what's happening is that you and the dealer are starting off with the same amount. You both have 10. Now, yes, they do have another card under here, but right now all you know is that you have 10. All they know is that they have 10. They have to take another card. You would be dumb not to take another card in some form, whether to hit or double. All right. And so you're both going to get at least one more card. And what I think is going on here is that no matter what you take, they have the same exact odds of also getting that same thing. All right. What I mean by that is we would probably want to stand as soon as we get into that 17 or higher range. And that's what the dealer has to do as well. It's usually what is marked out on the table here. And so to do that, there's a 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, ace. That would get us in that range. All right. And specifically, if we take one of those, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of our total 13. So, and again, I'm just using a quarter of the deck here, just the spades, but that's 8 out of 13 cards, which yes, is more than half. And so why wouldn't we double that down? Well, because the dealer also has 8 out of 13 cards to kind of get that same thing. And there's a little asterisk there, and that's because if we have a decision to make, that means that we know the dealer doesn't have a 10. So really, or a 10, not an ace. They don't have an ace underneath because the hand, if they would have flipped an ace over, they would have had blackjack. The hand would have been over, right? They would have taken your chips and that's it. And so I guess they have one less, but the same idea kind of holds true, is that there's a majority of the cards that's going to land us or the dealer within that range that's 17 or higher. All right. And because of that, since we and the dealer both have the same kind of opportunity there, I don't think that's going to be enough to double down. All right. And specifically, there is a deviation to double this. A 10 doubles versus the dealer's 10 at a true count of +4 or higher. And again, if you kind of take away their idea of having an ace underneath, because we have the ability to make that decision, and we could double down at a true +4 or higher. Well, if this is a quarter of the deck and you think that the count is +4, that means for one deck, if I take out just one deck here, that means in one, that's a little bit more. There we go. In one deck, there'd be 4 more high cards. Okay, so not per 13, this time it's for the full deck. There'd be 4 more, and then at that point, you would be likely to maybe get a 10, and then they might also, and if they would, then you just push, all right, but they would also have a chance to get one of these other cards, and so then it would be worth it to double down at a true +4 or higher. But just starting out at a count of 0, you probably would not have that ability, okay? So that is the first hand. Again, just both being the same. I think that's why we would not risk the double down, and we would just hit in that case. All right, let's pull these back. And then our second hand that we're going to talk about today is going to be one that you have heard for years and years, like I said, and you would know exactly what to do. Let's give you another couple $100 out here. And that is when you have a pair of eights. No matter what the dealer's up card is, what should we do with eights? We should split them, all right? But have you ever thought about why? Well, after maybe thinking through it for 5-10 seconds, you probably would get a pretty good idea of that 16 is a terrible starting hand. It is the worst starting hand that you can potentially have. However, we're bailed out here by having eights because one option, besides just hit or stand, is to split. And when you start with an 8, you are way more likely to end up with a better final total as opposed to starting with 16. 16, whether you stand, especially against the dealer's 10, or hit this. If you hit, you're probably going to bust. If you stand, you're probably going to lose. All right, those two decisions aren't very good for you as the player. And so we want to have a third decision, which is to split these, and starting with an 8 is a much better starting hand than 16. Okay, so that's kind of the why behind you splitting 8s. Again, no matter what the dealer's up card is, 10 included, all right, you would also want to split those. Now, if you are a advanced player and you've maybe you are on BJA and you've looked at some of the deviations, yes, there are some for when you might want to surrender your 8s against dealers' 10s and aces. It would depend on whether you're playing S17 or H17. But I think for my general average viewer here, that might not come into play for you. So you're probably just best knowing that you need to split your 8s. All right. In fact, there's only about 20% of the tables in the United States right now. This is where I'm filming in the United States that allow surrender anyway. So I would not worry too much about knowing when you'd want to surrender those. Okay, so split your 8s always. All right, and then the last one today is, like I said, I think it's going to be the most interesting. All right, but before I get to that, guys, I actually want to talk to you a little bit about the sponsor of this video, and that is Blackjack Apprenticeship. I mentioned them earlier. And Blackjack Apprenticeship is gracious enough to sponsor this because they are the #1 site for learning how to count cards. All right. So this is kind of their site here. This is the members side of things. And they do a bunch of free stuff as well. But specifically in the members site, they have access to a few of my favorite things I'll talk about. One is going to be the pro betting software. The pro betting software is essential if you want to be a card counter and do this thing kind of pro or semi-pro, because it allows you to throw in your own numbers, your own bankroll, whether the table is S17 or H17. All right, it kind of spits out what to do in a 1 to 8, 1 to 10, whether you're playing just one hand, whether you're playing two hands. And also it shows you that expected value versus the risk of ruin, right? And you very much need to know that, otherwise you could potentially go broke and lose all your money there at the tables. We don't want that to happen. All right, going back out here, a couple other things that Blackjack Apprenticeship has that I would want you to look at is, one is the Casino 411. If you ever want to take a blackjack trip, I would highly recommend that you check out Casino 411. It shows you not only how many tables, blackjack tables, there are at a specific casino, but also shows you the penetration on those tables, all right? So whether they cut off one deck or 0.7 of a deck or half a deck or whatever, if you're playing double deck or something like that. And then sometimes the table conditions as well. Like if you kind of click into the reports, it might show you that a certain dealer is very fast or slow and which ones to avoid, maybe certain times a day to avoid those things, okay? All right, and then the last part of Blackjack Apprenticeship that I personally really enjoy, they have a lot of other features too, but that's going to be the training suite. This is where I spend most of my time, and you can learn some of the different aspects of the game, like the running count, get really good at that, the true count, all right, maybe some deviations. Then when you're ready, my favorite part is the test out. This kind of gives you about 3 different shoes that you can go through and test your abilities playing with the correct bet spreads, all right, the correct decisions, the correct deviations, all right, and then it also evaluates all that. And until you can pass that at a pretty good percent of 100% every single time, I probably would not go to the actual casino until I can get maybe 5 to 10 100s in a row. That's my personal goal. If you want to be a little more risky, I suppose that's your prerogative. But those are some of my favorite things about Blackjack Apprenticeship. Okay, so one thing that I would encourage you to do is if you are serious about getting that, or if you just want to look into it, I have a link down below this video that takes you to kind of my affiliate page with Blackjack Apprenticeship. I am an affiliate with them, so if you click on my link and choose to purchase, I do get a little bit of kickback. But also on that page, Colin Jones, the founder of Blackjack Apprenticeship, goes through some of the different things that you can find on that site, including the pro betting software, the training suite, like I mentioned, and some of the other cool aspects with a little bit of a video on each. So go ahead and check that out after this video. Some of those different aspects of Blackjack Apprenticeship I think are pretty awesome. All right, that brings me to my last hand. Let's get you another couple $100 out here. And that is going to be a 9 versus a dealer's 2. All right, and I was kind of digging into the numbers for this for a pretty long time until I kind of came up with the why behind why we don't double down here. All right, and so by not doubling, we have to assume that our account is not at a true 1 yet. Once we get to a true 1, then you would be okay mathematically to double down. But I looked into why, all right, and to do that, I actually assigned, well, they're already assigned, but each one of these, of course, is worth a value. 2 is worth 2, 3 is worth 3, all the way up until 10s. Jacks, queens, and kings are all worth 10. And the ace, of course, is worth 11. So I have that written out for us over here. And what I found is that the expected value, just like when you plug in those numbers to the pro betting software with Blackjack Apprenticeship, you also have expected value of what you're going to get. If this represents, our starting amount at 0, or during our first card here. And each one of these, if I add those all up, like 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 4 is 9, 15, 20, 27, all the way up, I think we get 95 if I added those up correctly. And that's, of course, counting aces as 11. Now, of course, they can also be counted as a 1, so that skews the math just a little bit. And that might actually be what plays the factor in the end. But when I add those all up and divide by 13, that's going to give us 7.3, which means that the average card, my average draw, my average expected value, if you will, is going to be a amount of 7.3. And so if I were to draw that as the dealer or as the player with a 9, that's going to give me 16.3, which again isn't in that range of 17 or higher. And so it might not be considered a good hand at that point. So that might be one reason why you don't want to double down here. However, we also have to think of it from the dealer's point of view, because if I kind of go through my my normal idea of looking at all the cards, if I have a 9, well, how many of these 13 cards are going to land us in that good region? Well, 9 plus 8 gets us to 17. So from 8 and higher, that'd be 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, ace. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, of course, is more than half out of those 13. So it looks like it could be a potential good idea to double down. However, I was thinking, why shouldn't we? All right, what does the math actually say? And that's where I got the 7.3 number when I added all those up and found the expected value. And I think it comes into play with the dealer's 2. Because when the dealer has a 3, it is okay to double down your 9, but why not against a 2? And so here's where if I add up 7.3 plus 7.3 plus 2, that's, well, 7.3 and 7.3, that's 14.6. 14.6 plus 2 is 16.6. And if you round up, that does get them to 17. And so they might think that they're able to potentially make this hand by just flipping over their bottom card and then one other card. All right. Again, that's assuming if the ace is an 11 there. Now, if the ace is a 1, I suppose I didn't do this math, but I suppose they're probably even more likely to get in that range, because let's say they do flip an ace. Now, all of a sudden, they'd be at, let's see, where are we at? 16.3, I think. Well, then an ace, if it was just one more, or 16.6, excuse me. If it was just one more card, that'd be 17.6, which of course is in that range still. And so the ace could actually help them land in that range a little bit better. All right, so then I thought, well, why does this change when we go from having a 9 versus a dealer's 2 at a count of 0 from a 9 versus a dealer's 2 at a count of +1? Why is it okay to double down then? And so that is this math, and there's a couple things here. One, I can't just use my 95 over 13 anymore, because a true +1, remember, that's if I have a full deck, that means that I have, on average, one more high card that is in there. That's all that means, is exactly one more high card in those 52 cards. And you can get that a couple different ways. One, you could say that there'd be a 10 valued card, instead of out of 52, it'd be out of 53. But what I found to be a little bit better is if I look at my low cards, my 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, if I take out the average one there, so 2 and 6, 3 and 5, and then 4 is kind of in the middle. So 4 you could say is my expected value of a low card. And as that comes out, our count goes up, right? So it also cause there to be more high cards because you have a low card taken away. This is where the math gets a little bit heady. That would give me, instead of 380, if I multiply those both by 4, 380 and 52, multiplying 95 and 13, those are same numbers from earlier. Instead of 380, that'd be now 4 less, which is 376. And instead of 52, I'd have one card taken out, and that'd be a 51. Again, this is just assuming one deck. All right. So what did that do from my average? Well, instead of 7.3, now it's 7.37. It went up about not quite a 100th of a point there. And so that does move it up slightly, but it's very interesting as to why that math works. And I'm guessing that it has to deal with me counting the ace as strictly an 11. All right. If it were to count as a 1, I wonder if that math would be slightly different there, and that would show me that it'd be okay to double down on that 9 versus dealer's 2 at a true 1 or higher. So to answer this guy's question who asked earlier as to why this works, this is kind of a tough one. So that's my best guess, is kind of showing the expected value and thinking that it might not be worth it because the dealer is very likely to make their hand to double down until you get to a true 1. However, I'm more of just a trust the math kind of guy, and I did my best to kind of look at it, and I think it's still a little bit iffy there. Now, of course, 9 is a very good starting hand still. And like I said earlier, there's an 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace that would all land us in that region that's a 17 or higher, and would be okay and acceptable to double down. And then the last thing that I maybe thought is, because of that, I wonder too if instead of just the ace, if there's also thought to maybe not risking the double and just taking the win with a 100 when like it might not be worth double the amount, because you still have quite a few that wouldn't land you in that great range, with the dealer very likely to make their hand. And if you're just, it's kind of like why you don't split 10s all the time. So that could be a potential reason as well. So anyway, my whole point here is maybe you should comment down below and think, what are your thoughts as far as the math goes? That's my best guess, is some of those kind of reasons all put together. But again, I spent about an hour looking into this, and kind of came up with this expected value idea, and saw that it did go up, 0.07. But I don't know if that's quite enough. So if you like these kind of videos, some of them are a lot easier. Like we had those pair of 8s versus a dealer's 10. That one's easy to see why we would split those 8s. The 10 versus 10 at the beginning, that's an easy one. This one, though, that's a little bit harder. So if you like these, please give me a thumbs up down below. That really helps me out. And also, please check out that link down below this video with Blackjack Apprenticeship. If you are considering a membership, do your research, check that out. I know Colin doesn't want to just sell memberships to anybody. He really wants you to make sure that you're getting exactly what you need out of Blackjack Apprenticeship, and the best way to do that is to kind of see what's out there with those videos on that link. All right, so until next time, guys, remember, this is A1 Blackjack.